Okay, good evening. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I have about 3 things I need to tell you. The first, the homework for this week, the only thing that you have to turn in is the discussion forum. The beer game is for your benefit, but I do want to encourage you to use it even if you are a service-based business, because you do have to have a supplier somewhere, okay? You can't do everything all on your own. The other thing I want to tell you is that next Monday at 6:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am going to do, and this is optional, an office hours on Zoom, so I can answer your questions about the customer journey map. Even if you've turned it in, I'm still going to cover it, especially if you want to finish it or update it. And I'm also going to talk about the economic model homework. Okay. So you actually don't have anything due at all next week. So if you want to, you can come. Otherwise it'll be recorded. Send your questions ahead of time, and I'll try and have different examples from each of the different industries. Okay. So enjoy the week off next week and have a happy Thanksgiving. All right. Okay, Deanna.
All right. That would have been really funny if you just kind of ended the meeting. It sounded like we were closing. Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad that you could join us today. Appreciate your flexibility. If just as a reminder, as we get started, you can post your questions in the chat, or you can just let me know you have a question, like to ask it live. Our speaker today, he monitors the chat really well too, sometimes a little better than I do. So he may just take questions before I even get to ask them. So, but I'll keep track. You can raise your hand as well if you want to say a question live. Just as a reminder, if you can at all have your cameras on, have them on. It's a lot easier as we kind of talk to a class if we can see who we're talking to, but understand that it may not be possible for some of you. So awesome. So this week we are on value delivery. We're going to talk a little bit about supply chain, but also our speaker this week, Josh, he is an entrepreneur by trade. He can speak on any area of business and very well. So we always tend to, not only can we stay on topic, but if we've got questions, just like kind of naturally happens each week, you got questions that you need answered, Josh is a person to do that. So without further ado, I will let Josh kind of introduce himself. If you could do that, Josh, and just give us a little kind of brief background of who you are, where you come from, and then we'll get started with some questions.
Absolutely. Just a quick check before I start talking too much. Y'all can hear me okay? Great. Yes. So yeah, thanks for having me on. I really love doing this. I think Deanna's been asking me to hop on to either in person or online for coming up on 2 or 3 years now, Deanna, I think since our first thing together. Yeah. And it's literally my favorite thing to be involved with. And I'm involved in quite a bit, so that's saying a lot. I am uber curious and involved in too many things. So I've started, built, and sold 2 different supply chain companies in 2 different countries. I do a large number of consulting with small businesses. My favorite space is not the tech. It's not all the sexy stuff. It's like today I was on the phone with a concrete company and a medical revenue company, just getting into the operations. How do we communicate better? How do we grow? How do we get more out of less people without stressing people out? So that's what I do. I'm a big operations guy, and every business has operations of some sort. And then I have supply chain experience just because of the actual industries that I've been in. And then on top of that, I write software and I do machine learning for a lot of supply chain companies to this day. So I do that through a small little entity called Kaizen Labs, just helping mostly around inventory optimization, but sometimes the models stretch outside that. But I love entrepreneurship. I teach at Syracuse University. I live in Austin, and love getting involved in IVMF. I think that's a quick general thing. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. It's not helpful to you guys, so let's get to what is helpful to you guys.
Thanks so much, Josh. I appreciate that. I will just as a quick off-topic thing. I will put a link to the beer game so that it's more of an explainer video. I'll post it here in the chat, and then I'll post it in Blackboard as well, just to kind of go through, and it kind of just explains a little bit more in detail what it's all about. All right, sorry about that, Josh. Little side note, as I know some people are having a little trouble with that. So just to kind of, as we start off tonight, really talking about, value delivery, and determining your customers' needs and things like that. I'd start off with this first question is, can you explain really what the supply chain process is, what supply chain management really is, and its importance? We have a mix of those who are still in business ideation and those who are already in business for this class.
Absolutely. So I actually went through all your profiles. I didn't memorize it, but I did see kind of the mix of companies that are going to be in here. And supply chain is undergoing two kind of revolutions at the same time right now. The first revolution is that, okay, so supply chain is just how we get our products to our customers. Okay, it's the suppliers, it's any processes we need to do, it's tracking that through the system. It sounds really boring, right? You just buy it from a supplier, check the quality, and move on. It ends up being far more complex, especially given geopolitical changes, macroeconomic changes, the amount of information that travels with these parts, and the number of government entities and private companies that touch these parts. The complexity just grows. So the first revolution is tech-based. That is IoT, that is sensor tracking. But the other revolution that's really interesting is, and this is more pertinent to this class, because of the major growth in software over the last 20, 30 years, the way that we give value to customers is becoming more and more tech-based, service-based. So the supply chain is more and more becoming integrated with and less separable from how are we delivering value to our customers, which is why I think it's great that Deanna labels us value delivery and supply chain, because the two are really getting harder and harder to separate. And so as far as you guys go, there's all of you, I think, are involved in supply chain. It just might not be buying. I think one of you is running like a spice company, right? So you have obvious suppliers, you have obvious processes that you're doing to mix your spices and then sell those. Whereas some of you are doing health, wellness, fitness type things, or that's what you want to get into. There's definitely still a supply chain there. You're just going to sub some words out and change them around a bit. But the idea of grabbing things, doing something to them, checking that quality, and then distributing it in a user-friendly and applicable way is going to be very pertinent to what you're doing. So supply chain, I think, applies to really all of us in a wider view, but not in the 1980s definition, probably not. So I take that to back up and go with the change here.
Thanks so much, Josh. So in kind of keeping on the supply chain topic, as we think about risks, right, what are some major risks in supply chain? And then kind of to caveat on that, how do you manage those risks?
Yeah, so the risks are a lot. And Deanna, if you don't mind for a sec, I want to grab anybody who's willing to speak up and say, if you think supply chain affects your business, and if so, just a 10-second soundbite on how, because I'd love to make this as pertinent as possible and not just a high level, boring talk. So anybody willing to turn off the mute for a second and tell me either why supply chain is or is not pertinent to your business?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll start calling on people.
Well, I think a supply chain, I'm a supply chain major myself, is the foundation of any business, because you need to have that built before you can even start building all the other processes, the sales and everything else. It's like a house. If you don't have the foundation built, it will eventually collapse. So that's just my point of view.
I agree.
Alan, go ahead.
So I'd like to ask Mr. Schultz specifically, maybe this is taken off topic. If it is, reel it back in. Classically, and I have a little bit of supply chain experience with some of the companies I work for, the business loans we get from the banks would usually require a set return level and a set return value. This is what we're putting the money to. this is how much we're going to make, and this is how quickly we can pay you back. Whereas our needs as a supply-oriented and logistics-oriented business, sometimes we needed to take that volume of money and put them in different buckets to invigorate and push different parts of the supply chain to get them moving. And the language of the banks and the language of what we were doing didn't always synthesize, didn't always sync. Could you speak into that, please?
Yeah. So can you, your background is in banking, or you said you have some supply chain?
I was a logistics manager for Amazon for a little while, operations and logistics.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you dealt with the banks, is that?
As part of my role, yes.
Gotcha. Interesting. So I actually have 5 years of finance before I moved into supply chain down in New York City. So I understand the ROI mindset very well. ROI being return on investment for those that that's a foreign term, but ROI is really, really important. And I think, like I said, sometimes it's swapping out terms. So one of the things that Amazon, I'm sure, is always monitoring, that any company should be monitoring, is inventory. And this is just one thing, but we'll just take it as an example. Inventory is cash tied up, right? If you have it in inventory, you are not able to basically grow that cash at that time. It's sitting there. So the more inventory turns that you get, the better. Also, you have to consider that that money could be doing something else. We call that opportunity cost. So if you are a smart business owner, you're paying attention to how much cash do I have tied up? How often am I turning it? What is my margin on it? And from that, you can actually calculate what your return is in your, let's say, 12-month time frame based on the margin and the turns. We call that return on assets or return on inventory. The smart supply chain managers, the smart ops managers are measuring that very similar to a bank. Just unlike a bank where you have one loan, a beginning and end date, this you have multiple turns inside of that same defined period. And as long as, again, you just spread out that margin times those turns, you really have the same thing. And so now your question becomes, is this inventory worth holding? And if so, how much of it should I hold? And then your next question is service level. So ideally, based on what we just said, right, and I'm sure, Alan, you know this, you would hold infinite inventory because you can get it and you turn it. But then, you'd hold no inventory, because the lower inventory you hold, the faster the turns, the higher the margin, the better your leverage. But you want to have availability, right? This 1-day shipping that we're all used to now, that's because people already have it in stock. They didn't pack it up the second we asked. And so you have this balance between inventory levels and serviceability. But again, that considered, you can still have the ROI mindset. So like you said, Alan, the language doesn't always add up or doesn't always match, but the concepts are still the same. It's just the bank doesn't get that you can view inventory as ROI. And sometimes the supply chain team doesn't get why the bank cares so much about ROI, even though they do too. Does that answer your question? Is that what you're looking for? That is actually what the conversation I have. And sometimes we spread out to all the different metrics, but on a weekly basis with Kaizen Labs, it's all the stuff that Amazon probably does down to the lowest level. Lots of companies don't do. They don't think about their inventory that way. They just figure, I'll buy 2 years worth and that way I'll never run out. And they don't realize that cash could be used to grow the business elsewhere during those 2 years. And then you have a whole conversation about how to optimize those levels.
Hey, Josh, it's Jason. I think from what you're looking at on direct day-to-day models works, but sometimes you do have to hold on to inventory, and inventory can increase in value. So like I'm doing collectible toys, and you can't even put a number on some of the inventory of some of the things that are out there. Mm-hmm. So those things increase in value, and that's based more on emotions and what people are willing to pay in the market drives versus what actual inventory is out there.
Yep, agreed. It's not the same, but it's very similar to a business I ran, and it's aerospace spare parts. So in aerospace spare parts, you hold for 5-10 years possibly, and your pricing is based on basically which air models are being built, like you said, at that time, which drives, I might have an NS fitting that I could sell for $10 1 year, but then once Boeing builds all those and then nobody's using them, the next year it's worth $2. Managing inventory is not a key metric in those businesses. Like Jason just said, your availability is pretty much off the charts, and you're more trying to, at least in my experience, Jason, let me know if this is correct, you're trying to predict price trends and when you should or should not sell and what the price should be. You're more focused on pricing than inventory.
Yeah, that too. And then, I mean, I can use a current example too, like trying to do predictive modeling with the market right now. I don't know if everybody is looking or watching, but just like a simple one, you know, everybody's watching The Mandalorian and they want the Baby Yoda. So like you see predictive marketing for Christmas every year on what the best toys are going to be and what the supply can get out to the market versus what people buy and hold on to elevate those prices as it gets closer to Christmas.
Very interesting. Somebody else can go what they want, and I'm just
Gosh,
gonna
James.
take care of my wife.
Yeah, James put something in the chat. So James can't respond via audio, so he will communicate directly via chat. His service is IP based. Does supply chain exist there? He's from what I remember correctly, James is doing on counseling, I believe. Correct, James?
Online counseling through
Yes.
a website. Yeah, I mean, supply chain would be probably least applicable to you. You have value delivery, which is going to go along the lines of, it sounds like what Sandra's working with you guys on, which is customer journey. Why are they buying? Writing content and copy to attack that. But yeah, you probably have the least dive into supply chain. A lot of the service businesses that still use a lot of supply chain are medical, legal, some consulting. Those kind of places still have quite a bit of suppliers, outsourcing, and things like that. But you got the best kind of business, James. Low variable and ultimate scalability.
Yeah. Who else? Who else wants to give how they? Yeah, go ahead, Victor.
Hey, how's it going, Josh?
Good. How are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm kind of I think I'm kind of in the same, at least the main part of my business is music. And you know, of course there's already you know, funnels and ways to do that. It's all about the marketing and promotion. But do you see that I would be affected by supply chain, except for maybe having to manufacture a few CDs for the older folks?
Yeah, no. When you talk about creative arts or knowledge work, and when I say knowledge work, I mean the actual value is in and begins with knowledge. So like consulting, very little supply chain, right? Because you're getting a digital file. I'm assuming I have some friends that do some music mixing down in Mexico, right? So I've been to their studio. They get digital files and then they master them all there, or you know, whatever part of the process you're in. Now you're part of a supply chain. Again, I'm not a pro in the music industry, Victor, but my friend in Mexico is. He's the Kumbia Kings founder. He did all the work.
Oh yeah, yeah. Kumbia Kings are great.
Yep. So he's and so he has a supply chain set up. He has a certain guy he does recording with. He has another person that does the mastering, and he's walking me through it. And I didn't realize there were so many steps. But even that music goes through a process. Am I correct? Before
Okay,
it gets
yeah. No, it does. And I guess I didn't realize that, you know, the manufacturing or the creation of the music really depends on the supply chain. So
yeah,
either it's an engineer or a bass player or whatever. I already own a good deal of recordings that have been produced by like David Foster and have this people spent a lot of money on, but haven't been released. So I'm hoping that that's gonna help.
So that's your inventory, and your time is your capacity.
Yeah.
If you want to put it in manufacturing terms.
Love it. Thank you.
But you don't have to worry about lead time.
Josh.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Josh, Robin sent me privately and said, what about the supply chain for laundromats? If you want to explain that a little more, Robin, you can, if you can do it in the chat or if you can unmute.
I'm assuming you have to have detergents. Is it detergent bring your own, or is it available at shop?
We'll see what she says. I don't know if her audio's available. Some people don't work audio. So why don't you put that in the chat, Robin, and we'll come back to you. Oh, she doesn't have a business yet, but she is looking to do laundromats.
So I'm getting the gist here. Let me put it this way, and this is going to circle back to what Deanna said about risk, and this is going to cross over into operations. In the 60s and 70s, supply chain was how you got your product, and product was what you sold. Now there's so much tech, there's so much software. I get my movies downloaded, right? I get games for my son downloaded. We get it digitally. So the question no longer becomes, is lead time, is logistics going to get in the way? Now it becomes a broader question. And this goes back to that kind of second revolution I was talking about in the beginning, where supply chain isn't just moving a product anymore. It's how are we getting this to the customer? And so when you think about risk, you're thinking about what's going to stop me from making money today? What could I run out of? What could go down? What are the blockages between me and that customer getting it? So there's a famous saying in software, and I think it applies really everywhere. There's two things you got to worry about. You got to worry about the product, and you got to worry about distribution. And if you can nail those, you'll make money. Now that's an oversimplification, but if you got the right business idea, the right one with a fit, and you can deliver on it, you can execute on it, then there's customers and you'll make money, right? So what we're talking about is not so much do you have the right market? That's a whole different topic. We're talking about, okay, once I have the customers, once I know they want this, what's going to stop me from getting my idea, my product, my service, whether it's how my consulting services, right? If you use SMS, what if they don't like texting? If you are over online, what if the site goes down? If you're a laundromat, you could lose power, you could lose water, you could not have something else needed. You could have problems with your door if it's an automated place, right? All different things can stop you from making money. It might be an hour, it might be a day, but when all of your numbers, all of your revenue is fit perfectly with costs, and then all of a sudden revenue drops and you have 2 unprofitable days, if you're thin, that might throw off your whole month. I just talked to a concrete guy who literally makes money sometimes and he loses money some months and he can't figure out why. And it's because he's running so tight that if he has one issue with concrete, one issue with an employee, any little thing, boom, he lost money that whole month, right? So he all of a sudden is very aware of the thing stopping him from delivering value and bringing that stuff to his customers. So I guess maybe for this conversation, better to think of supply chain more in terms of, like Deanna worded it, value delivery. What is going to stop me from physically, literally delivering this value, and how can I mitigate those risks? Hopefully that helps. And I saw some questions, but I can't multitask, so.
That's okay. That's why I'm here. So we just had a couple people just kind of commenting on it. Alan said, I almost think a laundromat would have a VMI base for the purchase available detergent, cleaning, a dry cleaning portion possibly. Kelly said, yes, I'll have a lot of people in our supply chain. Kelly, would you mind talking a little bit more about your business or idea? She might not be able to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, yeah, we can.
I hate this. Well, it's just, we're doing the laundromat, so we won't have a dry cleaning portion, but we will have a laundromat, and yes, detergents, that, but I'll also be buying cards, because people will purchase cars online to come in to use in the laundromat instead of coins, because I told
Okay.
them old and they don't use coins anymore.
All
I
right.
kind of like the coin idea.
So yeah, those are things that could stop you. Again, you think about these and you say, oh, that'll never happen. I found if it can happen at some point, it's going to. The card maker no longer makes the same card, and none of it's compatible with your current setup with all your laundromat stuff. Again, not going to happen in the next year probably, but as you start to scale, it's the last thing you want is to build a whole system, a whole business, maybe multiple locations around a system that ends up kind of going out of style and no longer being serviceable. So those are things that I would be concerned with that are supply chain related. You're just buying far less frequently. Digital payments, because all your upgrades are going to be, Jason just said that in the chat, your upgrades are going to be over software rather than hardware pieces.
Who else? Anyone else? A lot of you are too scared to talk. Oh, so James, or who said that? I have a referee apparel company. What what would be some of the roadblocks for me getting my referee apparel to my customer?
So James, you got a legit supply chain. Are you making these in the US? Looking for, you can use the chat.
No, I'm not.
You're not. So you're getting these made overseas?
No, I buy directly from a distributor.
Which hemisphere?
In Ohio.
Ohio. Okay, so you're buying them in the US from a distributor. They're coming already completely made?
Yes, that's correct.
Now that means that your distributor's not manufacturing them. Do you know where they're getting them from?
Overseas.
What's that?
Overseas.
Overseas. So there's your first supply chain blind spot. Obviously, if you're buying from a distributor, though, as long as the distributor is properly managing inventory, you'll be fine. Do you know how many other customers they have that buy the same or similar referee apparel that you're buying from the distributor?
Thousands.
Thousands. So probably one customer isn't going to throw it off. For instance, I bought from a supplier that Apple already also bought from. So whenever Apple needed something, I got pushed to the side, which caused lead time concerns. But yours might be more event-based. I'm just thinking off the top of my head where COVID, right? If everything shuts down because of COVID, and then all of a sudden COVID goes away, you're going to have a number of people ordering probably uniforms at the same time to kick off soccer camps for kids. Or I don't really know what it's for, but I'm just kind of coming up with an idea. But
COVID completely shut me down.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you have more problems on the back end than you do on the front end. On the front end, I'm assuming you're shipping these. So I've been posting these on Twitter a little bit for small business owners because they don't think about this. Right now, shipping rates, if you're pulling it from overseas, are between 3 and 10 times as much, depending on what you're bringing over and how fast you want it. So shipping rates have been pretty steady for the last 5-6 years, oscillating a little bit, but right now it's way up. Not only that, port traffic is way up. So what's happening is the companies that make a ton of their money during Christmas, Apple, GE, all these companies are buying up all of the airfare going out of Shanghai. They're buying all the capacity up, making it harder for small businesses to get what they normally would in time. So you're seeing costs for large companies go up. You're seeing costs for small companies that maybe have only ever had 1 or 2 Christmases are all of a sudden going to go way up. It's going to wipe out all of their margins. So I wouldn't be surprised if the distributor needs to raise some prices. Again, they might have full stock and they're fine. But if they need to order right now based on unanticipated demand, they're going to have more margin, and you bet they're going to turn to you and try and at least get some of that recouped.
The prices have gone up.
They have, yeah. It's probably because of shipping. It's catching it. People, again, it's one of those things you don't think to monitor because it's been stable, and then all of a sudden it skyrockets, and then the effects ripple all through the supply chain.
Thank you.
Yeah. I didn't help you. I just told you about your problem.
You confirmed it.
Just so you know, James, the way that that's handled most of the time is you dual source. So you find 2 to 3 suppliers that can get you the same thing. You stick with your main one most of the time because you'll get the price discounts that way. Every couple of months, you send an order to your other backup supplier just to keep the relationship good. And then when you need them, you have an alternative source. Used very common in what are called critical parts in manufacturing. You'll always have a secondary source, sometimes a tertiary source. So just an idea for you if you want to start developing a secondary supplier for when this happens on your critical SKUs.
Thank you, because right now I only have one source.
Well, good 6-month project. Start developing a second. That way
Okay.
you'll be ready next time.
Tiffany, I see that you just put something. I was actually going to call on you to see if you wanted to talk a little bit. Tiffany said due to the nature of, yeah, I'll just let you talk. Go ahead.
All right. Due to the nature of my startup, the only correlation with SEM is basically the human factors only, because I'm working with like a human resources type consulting. Yet right now, what is happening, there's a big impact, say if I were to do it with the federal government due to the executive orders that are blocking the diversity and inclusion and unconscious bias training. So therefore, the only thing that I could do with supply chain management is make sure that the people they get the right people so that they can get the products out. So I would basically be training, I guess, people in the supply chain companies to make sure that they're culturally aware of what's going on.
Mhm.
Would that be a good correlation?
Yeah, I mean, again, your business with supply chain, probably not much because you're creative and knowledge work and your creativity is in what you know. And I think you're doing consulting, right? So you're helping other people understand what you know and execute on it. So yeah, you wouldn't have much in your ops, but you would have maybe some in your talent education for sure.
All right, thanks.
Alan's going crazy in the chat. Thinking out loud. He's like, sorry. No, go ahead. Keep it up. Keep it up. Who else? What about Anita?
Josh, I'm sorry. I was
Oh,
going to ask
sorry.
a
Go ahead,
question.
Jason.
So how do you create exclusive agreements with suppliers? Like you were talking about, you were getting pushed out by Apple. So how, if you do get a good supplier that you want to continue, how do you create those types of partnerships where you're always going to be number one to get the stuff from them? Have you done any of that?
Yeah, I did it with two casting suppliers. That's kind of cheating though, because with casting, you've got a mold with them. So you have to go to them and they kind of have to sell it to you. But what it's all relationship, right? So visiting them in person was crucial. And it depends on where. For me, that was in Ningbo, China. In Ningbo, China, the cultural thing is you go out to dinner, right? And you have too much to drink with the business owners. So I went through that whole thing with them, truly unwittingly. I don't roll like that. And that was a long night for me. But yeah, it's building the relationship so that you can make that call when you need to. And I talk about this all the time with some of the people that I work with, the teams that I work with day to day. I say, you're constantly building, and you guys, I'm sure all know this. I'm just going to put it into words that you guys, something you've all seen. You constantly build personal capital for the one time that you need it every year. But you need to build, right? Like, it's like when college kids are looking for a job, right? They don't talk to anybody. And then all of a sudden, they're like everybody's best friend. Like, oh, I want to job shadow you. And you're like, oh, it's Meg, isn't it? Yeah, okay. It's that kind of thing. It's very obvious. Where the college person that's thinking ahead is doing it as a sophomore, as a junior. They're constantly out. They're going to New York City every weekend if they're close by. They're shooting up to San Fran. They're building that. They're asking for nothing. They need nothing. But then when they do have the ask, everybody's there. It's really the same thing. We are constantly treating our suppliers with respect. For example, sometimes a supplier will say, I need to raise this 10%. If it's really low and I'm making a decent margin and they're always fair, I say, yeah, I want you to make extra money. I want you to have the money to stay in business, the money to innovate. I'm fine. I'll keep my price the same and I'll take the hit. You raise your price. Because once in a while, when I really want to win a big account and I need a quick 5% cut, all I got to do is ask them and it's done, right? So building that personal capital. From what I found, there's no other better way. You can use leverage, Jason. You can say, okay, I'm going to move all my business to your competitor then, but that always ends up short term because then the competitor doesn't care about you either. And then you've nuked two different suppliers. So for me, I just try to be really helpful to all the suppliers, realizing that they're just like me. They have suppliers and they have customers and they're trying to make money. And as long as they're making money, I'm not losing money. When I need the big ask to get my one or two big wins, they're there. I heard Tiger Woods say something one time, stuck with me, and it applies in so many areas of business, including this one. He said, I don't look to have great holes where I get way ahead. I try to make as many little mistakes as possible so that when I have the great hole, it gets me ahead. It doesn't catch me up. And I think sometimes in business, we're so busy trying to make a quick cent here and a quick thing there and get this extra sale. And we end up behind that when we finally have a great month, it basically catches us back up to even, instead of managing it close to the chest, not making too many mistakes, keeping our relationships good and healthy so that when we have the great month, it's boosting up ahead. Or when we need the big ask, it's there and we can boost up ahead. So.
Thanks. I was just trying to call some other people out to speak. Jason had a great question. So now I'm going to go see if Anita wants to speak a little bit about how your business fits into the supply chain.
Well, I'm not really sure if mine fits into the supply chain because mine is leadership coaching and consulting in the area of force protection and anti-terrorism.
Gotcha. That's outside of my knowledge, Anita. Maybe I need to take some consulting. So what do you have experience in the field that you draw from?
Yes, while in the military, as a military police, I've also gone through all of the executive courses of force protection and anti-terrorism. That was my job, my last 10 years in the military. And as a contractor, that's what I did. And I'm also a certified coach, teacher, and trainer. So I've had the years of experience with coaching, mentoring, and teaching soldiers, civilians, and inside of the military and outside. So I look at the value that I bring, basically my experience, knowledge, and expertise. But, and then my risk is, I look at my risk as having qualified people that will be able to, that I can bring, that I can employ. But here in the DMV, saturated with a bunch of coaches and consultants, but where I'm different from them, I'm also a Christian coach. So I let people know before we start doing, before we start our sessions, our engagements, if they are a believer, we're going to pray. So I kind of set myself aside. I have pastors or spiritual leaders who I coach, but since COVID, they've been trying to get their congregations healthy. So COVID really punched me in the throat, but I'm like, I'm okay because I have retirement to fall back on. So
yeah, I'm gonna respond to that way outside, and I'm chuckling at Alan's comment for what you need for martial arts school. Tissues for feelings. So this is a conversation I've had 4 times in the last week. So it seems to be ringing true. And I was posting about it and I got a lot of feedback. And actually one of the consulting things I'm doing right now is because of this. So this current conversation is turning into why I don't need supply chain, and that's fine. A lot of people don't. So let's pivot to something slightly more helpful. I don't think Deanna will care if I do that. A lot of you are growing knowledge-based creativity things that are based on you personally and what you know. And that's awesome that you guys have that experience. But like Anita has hinted at, in order to scale, your largest risk right now is you. Like if you're not around, you can't do it. It's your network, it's your history, it's your experience. Not only that, if you do find somebody else that can help you, you have to teach them everything. And it's not just finding somebody who has force protection experience or terrorism training. It's because your niche, your differentiator is not the force protection. It's the way in which you deliver it to the niche in which you deliver it. And I don't know too many, Christians out there that also can take people down basically. So that's a pretty small niche, right? So, and I do know a lot of Christians, Anita. So I think the biggest topic to talk about here right now with you guys is going to be, is your operation documented? And I come to this every time almost, and it's really big because it's a horrible thing to do. It's boring. You think, why do I need it to be documented? I'm going to give you 3 reasons. One of them, in order for you to grow, you're going to have to pull people on. The more time you're explaining to them what to do, how to do it, fixing their mistakes, the more you have to talk to your accountant, the more you have to deal with new people, the more, anytime you're explaining something, you're not, like, your time is literally money. You're not doing the thing that's bringing you money. You're doing the thing that you've already spent money on somewhere else. And then you're using your valuable time to re-explain that. Horrible use of resources. I have a rule in the small team that I run down in Mexico. I never answer the question directly. I've written a process manual. I write the answer in the manual and then I give them the link. That means I only answer every question once. After that, it's just a link away. And after a couple of years, you'll have hit all the major questions. So I'm going to actually, Deanna, while I'm doing this, can you do me a favor? Go on to Twitter and just go on my profile and scroll down the last 3 to 4 days. I did like a 30 thread tweet that's got exactly how to document your company, what steps to go through, what to label everything, I literally laid out my whole process. If you can find that and just post
Okay.
a link to the first one, that'd be awesome. While
Sure.
I keep talking. So what she's going to
Do
do is
that.
she's going to share this with you. This is like, they're tweets, right? So it's a summary of how to attack this. A lot of people attack documentation top down and then they never finish because top down is boring, it's vague, it's big. I start right in the middle with procedure and I define that in this thread. If you're not a Twitter person, that's fine. Email me. I will extract it to a Word document and send it to you. I have no problem doing that. But I do Twitter because people don't like reading blog posts anymore. But yeah, you can jump in and you can literally within 2 weeks of some hard work, you can document 80% of your process. One, it's going to increase your scalability. You're going to be able to scale with far less friction. Two, it's going to reduce mistakes. You're going to implement processes that are going to fix problems. Let's say you have somebody come in and they don't tell you about something in their history and you're on lesson 3 of your normal thing and this person just has a breakdown, not in a good way, okay? And you realize you triggered something and you're like, you know what? On our pre-call, we should really just check for these 2 things to make sure that this is going to be a good thing, right? Because maybe you find out, like, if we found out about that, we could have had a conversation that would have made lesson 3 much more easy for them to take. So you put that into your thing. If that's not documented, the second somebody else comes on, they're going to stop doing it because they didn't have that experience. They didn't go through that bad customer experience and say, I almost lost a customer. That's never happening again. If you have a documented process, you put in line 4, make sure to ask, et cetera, et cetera. Now, whoever comes in, whether you're a 50-person company no longer monitoring these phone calls, for a fact it's still going to be done correctly. And that problem that happened 10 years ago is not going to happen again. So you're increasing scalability. And then the third thing, if you ever want to sell your business, you have a package that you can give to a buyer. We all love to know like how much our business needs us. And at this point, they probably do, but nobody wants to buy a business that needs you. They want to buy a cash flow machine that does not need you. So you need to have a package you can give them and say, do this. I've already got the customers. I got the list. Here's all the processes. You can have a monkey do them. It doesn't matter. This thing makes money and it will continue to make money as long as you follow all my processes. If you don't have that, selling your business is going to be hard and you're going to get a lower value for it because they're going to have to re-up a lot of things. If you come with a nice package and say, this is my business, I'm selling it at 4 times cash flow, they're going to say, well, I got the whole thing. It's a nice, neat package. You're going to get a higher value. So by documenting your process, you are preventing mistakes, you're increasing scalability, and you're going to increase the value of your company if that's a direction you want to go. Plus, I know I talk fast, sorry. Plus, on top of all of that, you now have a platform that you can change from. So I'm sure you all have done it. You've read an article and it's had like a cool thing that you wanted to implement, right? Maybe, so for me, I'm looking at tech stuff all the time. And I always used to read like, on your landing page, try this little technique. I didn't have a landing page. So I just had this long list of things that I wanted to try. But if I had a landing page, oh, I read this, try this with your headline. I have a headline to go adjust and change it. I have a foundation that I can adjust and iterate. But if you have no documentation, when you find something that you want to improve, you've got nothing to go change to implement it. It's just an idea. If you've got a documentation process, even if it's poor, you've now, when you see an idea or see a problem, you've got something to go change, iterate, and write on, okay? So supply chain may not be pertinent to all of you. I believe what I just shared is extremely pertinent for all of you. Unless one of you already has everything documented, then you're just proving my point. Hopefully everything's smooth for you. An Amazon guy, of course you do.
So Josh, I'm pretty sure I got it. It's where you started that conversation. And there's some good lists right there. So check that out. I'll put, obviously if you click that link, you'll see Josh's Twitter handle. He's always conversing over Twitter.
Not right, but that's a good one too. That's all about.
It's not right. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. I got it up now.
I was trying to hurry.
Yeah. I post a lot about small business. Feel free to scan, and I'll take the next question if you want.
Let's hear from Jessica. We never hear from you, Jessica. Why don't you talk a little bit about what your needs are in the supply chain, or a little bit about your business?
my Alexa was going off right as that was happening. So I knew that was going to happen. Yep. Alexa, stop. Sorry about that, guys. I knew that was going to happen.
Triggered mine.
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say I probably triggered everyone else's as well. So it's kind of interesting because you're talking about scalability, and I think we're kind of in a company where we're not looking to scale in that way because we are looking to form really close bonds with our clientele. So we have a photography business. So mostly wedding and event photography. Obviously, we have certain suppliers that we work with, mostly other websites like The Knot and Wedding Wire, and using Photoshop and all of those, and different, Nikon equipment and all of that. But in terms of scaling, we're not looking, really our expertise is in our customer relations and our own photography abilities. So trying to bring, like you're talking about, having business processes and bringing people on, maybe as a contractor, but not anywhere where we want to scale to a huge photo studio or be Life Touch and have monopoly on all school photos that I just paid a ridiculous amount of money for my daughter's photos. So not bitter at all about that.
Yeah, even if you don't want to scale, I think there's still a lot of value. Lots of creative people build these documentation. The thing is, what I just shared was for scaling, but there is it doesn't mean personal touch needs to go away. There's two ways to think about scale. Scale is what you get done with a certain amount of resources. You're saying, I don't want to get more done, right? I'm getting the amount done that I want to get, but you can lower the amount of input needed from you. So you can scale kind of your denominator, right? Scale that back. So then you create processes so that things go faster, smoother. Once you document them, what I found, so I've done it for 6 companies now, and without fail, when just the act, even though you work in the business all the time, the act of writing it down, you say, hey, you know what? These 3 things I could probably just do with an Excel sheet or Airtable, and these 2 things. And so what you're doing is now you still have the same amount of customers, but now it's not taking up your whole life. You have more time to enjoy with them instead of, I have 16 hours of editing I have to do, or, so for example, I know nothing about your field other than I have 2 friends that do it. So if what I say is crazy, please try and find the principle, not what I'm saying. But let's say you edit, and I've noticed, like, I have a friend, Maven LeDuc, I don't know if she's in the Knot too, and she's out in North Carolina. She has a certain look to all of her photos, and she has a way that she creates that look, and she knows what it is, but she documented it. She created a checklist of it, of what she does with the color and the saturation and all that. So what that does for her, and these are her words, is when I'm on point and focused, it's easy for me to edit the photos. When I'm doing it late at night, I'm on my 3rd one and I've got 2 due tomorrow, I might skip steps. My mind is on other things. I'm thinking about the accounting. The checklist helps her actually do it faster without having to constantly refocus her mind and say, okay, what I do this with the eyes, I do this with the backscape. I got, like, she can almost tune out a little bit and still get the same quality of photo from her, whatever her creative process is. So hopefully that was a little helpful.
Yeah, it is. I mean, so my partner has PTSD and TBI, so we have to document everything anyway because he will forget what he told me. And so I always write as much down as possible. He's the creative, I'm the business side. I actually recruit students for SU as a full-time gig and moonlight as a part-time wedding photographer. So
Gotcha. I think I've seen your name before in my email, in my inbox.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. But yeah, I think the more we even just documenting, like you said, just the ways that we make our photos look and the specific looks that we have, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Culture of writing is really important. I'm going to steal that term from Amazon. Alan probably is familiar with that. Amazon does everything by writing: decisions, thought process, problem solving. You don't discuss it, you write it.
Quantifiable.
What is it?
It's quantifiable, and you prove that by writing through your answers so you can bridge that process with your peers and subordinates and even your supervisors.
I love it. And you have an audit trail of why something was what was done, which is huge.
So I got a question. So my whole business concept is about helping others create their whole supply chain. And I want to focus on make it sustainable and make it profitable. and it's based on the coffee business itself. Like they start a coffee business, from farmer to shop to customers.
Mhm.
So besides thinking on, because when we get the coffee from the farmers, it get roasted and get processed and stuff like that. I'm thinking about what do you think about the reverse logistics part of it? Because we got waste, right?
You tell me, where's the waste coming in?
The waste is coming, especially in the coffee grounds and all the food and everything else that comes with a coffee shop. But there's money on that as well. There's potential on that.
Is that you're educating me? I'm asking. So so you have coffee grounds from a coffee shop. Is that going? I know you can use it in like hygiene products. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about, like scrubs?
Yeah. You can use it. There's a lot of different ways that you can use coffee grounds to grow plants, to use it in coffee and products, and to actually make fuel. Everything can be made into fuel. So you can sell your waste.
I'm going to ask you some questions that will hopefully guide this. What's stopping people from using their coffee grounds for extra potential income? What's stopping coffee shops from doing that now?
Lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge. What else?
They don't have the habit. They don't have the habit of thinking. What they see trash as trash, but trash is not trash to somebody. What is trash for you? It might be a minefield it might be a resource to somebody, to other business. And building that circular supply chain from point A to coming back and building something else with it is what make it, it don't have limits.
You skipped. Yep, I agree with everything you said. I'm just going to take it and summarize it. Educating the customer on what can be done, and then you're skipping all ahead to the giant supply chain. In the middle of that is, I'm just picturing a coffee shop. If you're from Syracuse, Sam Bender runs Peaks. He's a friend of mine. Taylor runs Soleil. Taylor and Shem. They get the grounds out. They normally just put it in the garbage. Now they have to get a separate container, right? So now you've got process changes in their coffee shop, and coffees are very dependent on coffee served per amount of time. So there's a thing. How do you change your process and make this so it's easy? Maybe you create your own product that can store the coffee grounds and it can go onto the shelf or whatever. The second thing is, what is the cost to move grounds? Because you're essentially going to have a number of small packages that probably have large shipping rates, unless you have some kind of deal with the shipping company. Where is that going? Those grounds probably can't or shouldn't go direct, right? Because if they go direct, you're paying $10 per 2 pounds of coffee, probably going to get rid of any kind of revenue margin source you're going to get on that. So now you're thinking through, what is the supply chain that makes this possible? I don't have the answer, but off the top of my head, it's the same thing that got it there. Distribution sources that are close to a large number of coffee shops, that collect the grounds, can store them for a certain amount of time. When you hit critical mass, you then ship those and sell those to the providers, whoever they are. So, somebody's making a scrub, they order 20 pounds of coffee grounds after you put it through a rinse cycle, that kind of thing. So I'm seeing educating the customer, setting up the reverse logistics, the necessary warehouse or partners that have the warehouse space, figuring out what your shipping rates are going to be and how you're going to lower them, and then figuring out your go-to-market strategy on the other side. And then actually also your processes. How are you going to clean the grounds, prepare them for delivery? That sounds like a fun project. Yes,
it's very involved, but it has a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
But, think Disney, right? The perfect sample of a circle supply chain.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. I was thinking out loud. I wasn't really trying to tell you anything. I was just thinking out loud. That's a really fun problem. Let me know if you need any help with that or if I can help you at all. That's really interesting.
Okay. I will.
And
Okay.
Andrea, do you have unmuting capabilities? Why don't you talk a little bit more about your wood making?
Hi. Well, I started a woodworking business.
You were on mute before.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I started a woodworking business, and initially I started making everything, and it quickly became overwhelming because it was just me. You're talking about making cutting boards and then engraving them. As I grew my business and tried to make different types of products, I realized that some of the things I need to outsource or just buy already made or something else because it was just taking me too long to make everything, if that makes sense. So I outsourced my cutting boards. I don't make as much cutting boards from scratch anymore. I outsource some other things so that I can just kind of have other things, other products on my website other than just everything that I handmade. So my cutting boards, I just engrave versus making them from scratch, unless it's like a personal order that they want something differently. So I've learned over time to outsource and get more things already made to help me out than making everything from scratch.
I'm going to the chat here. It looks like you did something with your scraps. Is that correct?
Scraps? No. Well, what I was doing first is I started off making the cutting boards. And then I went into kind of making army plaques. So like different things you can hang.
Yep. Do you use the CNC machine?
I have an engraver.
Engraver, gotcha.
Right,
actually,
and I cut the wood. I cut the thin pieces of wood with my engraver and kind of make it that way.
I think I saw Alan's comment. His buddy makes pellets from the scrap wood, which is interesting. That also reminds me, depending on what kind of wood you use. So I moved to Texas recently, and down here, the way you smoke your meat is really big. And what I've learned in the short, I'm still learning a lot, but what I've learned in the short time I've been down here is a large part of that is what kind of wood you use. Wood pellets are what actually infuse the flavor. So there's a huge market for certain kinds of wood pellets down here in Texas, Andrea. So yeah, that's really interesting. You know what else I saw recently that was really interesting? I saw somebody doing this with wood. They were making tweets out of wood. So you send them like a tweet you liked, and they literally duplicate it on a large plaque. I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. But like you said, there's so many things you can make, right? So you're acing your marketing, you're niching down, you're focusing, and you're outsourcing everything else. It's great.
Yeah,
Hey, Josh, it's
that's
Jason.
part of my issue a little bit though, is finding my niche, but I'm working through it somehow.
It's just a number of small experiments.
Pretty much.
Josh, you talked a little bit already about shipping, and that's part of the supply chain too. And how can you like Amazon controls all their shipping, and Walmart does too, and all those big corporations. But as a small business, where can you find, I guess, discounts or cheaper ways to ship stuff? Because that eats into the profits a lot.
Yeah. What you can do is, if you look at, I'm sure you've looked like fulfillment centers that can get bulk rates on shipping. So UPS has a massive discount that they give that they don't tell anybody about. I only know about it because of the businesses I was in before. And the guy wanted me to switch, and he basically came over and showed me these discounts. It's like, based on your volume, you can get like 60% off. And I was like, 60%? Whoa. So what I did is another guy started a business up in New York. And basically, we just piggybacked him. We said, okay, this small business is part of this larger business. Can he get the rates? And the guy said, yeah, sure. Even though he's got his own UPS number, it's totally his own entity. We piggybacked on the rates. So you can look for deals like that. If you know anybody that's a big shipper, say, hey, can you call your UPS account manager in? I want to sit with you, and I just want to get my own account number and tell them it's kind of part of what we're doing here. So you can do that. there's fulfillment centers that will do that for you. So they basically say, we're shipping 100 small companies out of this warehouse. We're gonna take all that volume, get the UPS rate, and then tell all of our shippers that are shipping out of this warehouse, this is the rate you get. So I would look for same way you probably buy bulk discount.
Josh, we have, and I apologize if I murder your first name, but Nishishki, is that?
Nishiki, yes.
Sorry.
No worries.
Hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question. Apologize.
It was more of a comment. So I know that you were asking for people to kind of share. So my business started out as a health and wellness coaching consulting service. And now what my pivot is that I'm moving more towards actual products. So supplements, cheese, and then plant-based wellness shakes like protein powders and anti-inflammatory powders that you can add to a liquid, a juice or something. Mm-hmm. And with the supplement part, white labeling. And so you just, or private labeling, you just made me think about something, because I have a company that I know, like, and trust their products, and we're in the process of putting my branding or designing my branding for the products. But that whole backup supplier thing, that is definitely something that I have to consider. I make some products, but the bulk of it, I really wanted to private label. And so, you just gave me another project. So I just wanted to share that.
I wonder if that's difficult. Do you get some kind of approval? I don't know who would approve that. I don't know that space very well, but do you get approval based on the supplier? Like whoever's approving these to be okay for sale?
No, I don't have to get any type of approval for the supply. I mean, there's the certain licensing that I need in order to sell in the markets that I want to sell at, but the approval of who is the company that I'm using for white label, that's all me. Choosing that company.
So it would be easy. You've got to find the right supplier and then find how you're going to ensure consistency across both brands should you switch.
Yes.
Interesting. Well, sorry for the new project. That's the last thing.
No worries. No worries. Thank you.
Josh, could you go back to scalability and documentation for a little bit? Would you be able to maybe fine tune the beginning of the documentation process and kind of what the ideal end result should look like?
Yeah, so I just posted a link in there, something Sandra asked for. That was one of the ends. The other ones are totally enclosed in a SaaS product, so I can't even share the inside, but this one is basically a MediaWiki. It's got some public, so you can see the customer manual. If you go to that link I just shared, you can visit the quality manual, the customer manual, the supplier manual, maybe the EHS policy, but all the work instructions, forms and records and all that is behind the scenes. But back to your question, I gave in this, I'm going to repost it in this tweet here. And I'm sorry, I'm sharing tweets. That's so millennial of me, but this is the most condensed version to get like the information. All right. So it's just, I literally took about 2 hours and typed it out the other day based on something somebody asked me. So the way I write them might be different. I write them based on ISO, but then I've changed it to modify to some of the different businesses. So ISO 9000, if you're in manufacturing, you know exactly what that is. If you don't, probably sounds a bit foreign. It's basically a way to document your quality processes. And so I took that and expanded it a little bit to cover the entire operation. And I don't want to bore people, but basically I have my ops, I have reference docs that I reference within the ops manual, and then I have levels of that. Again, I don't want to walk through it because it's a very long conversation and it's really boring. But if you go through that, I answer very clearly every single part of that manual. And at the end of it, somebody asked me the same question, Deanna, what would this look like? So I went into Word and actually typed up a whole table of contents. And I believe if you go all the way to the bottom of that, there is 4 pictures in a row. Yep. that shows a generalized structure for the manual that you can see what that might look like. And then I even gave some tech that you can use. So that really should answer all of your questions. And if not, you're already on Twitter, just hit me up or email me if you're not on Twitter.
Boom. Awesome. We will, Sandra, just as a reminder, can we post this chat up in Blackboard as well, just because there's a lot of good information here. Josh, we have about 10 minutes left. But I was just wondering, I know you've shared a lot of resources. Are there some good resources that you know, based on a little bit of this conversation, any other good places for us to go for specific information on specifically, supply chain, value delivery, any good books, anything like that, that you've come across recently?
Yeah, I'll share a few. These are really general. I really like the book Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. Strategy is so important, and it's so watered down with how most people talk about it. That book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, really outlines what real strategy is, what it needs. Now, you guys are all military, so you have a much firmer grasp of what strategy really is compared to the business person that thinks strategy is having a cool idea and doing it. I also highly recommend, very underutilized in business, is correct problem solving. And I would look at bulletproof problem solving. So I'm writing a guide right now to problem solving, more for my own employees because they're bad at it. And I've bought 7 books. I'm reading them all. I'm kind of trying to get the best. And this book, by far, is the best problem solving book that I've come across. It's called Bulletproof Problem Solving. And then the other 2 that I would throw at you really quick have to do more with very general looks at how to run your business, and how a lot of people, like, once they get stressed out and they can't take it, they usually go to one of these 2. So one of them is called Traction, and it shares the EOS principle, which is how to think about your operations. It gives you templates and worksheets. It's basically like hiring a consultant to come in and clean up your ops. That's called Traction. The other one is for maybe a little bit bigger, but it will give you some frameworks to think about people and strategy and all this stuff. It's called Scaling Up by Burnish something. And it's based on the Rockefeller habits. So I don't love everything in those 2, but as far as just a general book to think about your entire operation and what a really well-functioning operation looks like, the EOS system, which is Entrepreneur Operating System out of Traction, and Scaling Up.
Thank you. I got 3 out of the 4. I'll post the 4th link as well. I kept up with you pretty well with those.
Yeah.
The next one, I just want to make sure it's right. That Traction is Get a Grip on Your Business. Just want to make sure that's the right one there.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. Yep, that's correct. And then
Okay.
the other one's got a purple cover, and it's got like a graph that goes.
Okay, I got that one. I'll post that one in just a moment. We got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. If anybody has a question, I think we've heard from almost everybody. Questions. Come on. Yeah, Alan, go ahead.
For Mr. Schultz again, when you're talking about documentation and scalability and fine tuning those processes and having a packet that you can hand over to a potential buyer, for instance, it made me think of the concept of solution by design. And I didn't know if that term meant anything to you.
No, but I'll be Googling it after. You want to get the rundown?
Sure. It's I'm shamelessly stealing it from the architectural world, and solution by design mentions future buildings being built to be more sustainable and off-grid. The term can also mean that you are building something with solutions in mind before the problems even manifest. And a great example of that is building a roadway system that becomes so problematic that nobody's riding bikes and exercising and walking anywhere. They spend an awful lot of time in cars. And when I lived in Chicago for Amazon, it would take me, without exaggeration, 45 minutes to go 2 miles sometimes. The obverse of that is if you had built that system, if you had built the city so that it couldn't support vehicles, more people would walk, have healthier lives. So you're talking about side effects versus side benefits in that solution department. And that's what that documentation process made me think of. That's all.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to be looking into that. Solution by design, huh? Thank you. That's the second thing I've been given today to look at that I'm interested. The other one being Napoleon glance, which somebody shared with me today that I might like. Napoleon's glance. All right.
Well, if you're interested in having some fun, when Isaac Newton was on his deathbed, he was asked what his most prized accomplishment was, and he said his celibacy for his lifetime accomplishment. And this was Sir Isaac Newton. I'm not convinced that was his best gift to mankind, but he was.
And on that note.
Oh boy, that's great. That's clever. I actually was watching an old, I can't remember who said it, but the two most important words in the human English language is complete silence, which I thought was funny. Like the two most important words. I just thought that was kind of interesting from an author. Last, any final words of kind of wisdom, Josh? I know Josh is always open to connecting with you offline on Twitter, actually online on Twitter, but offline from this forum. He's great conversation. He likes to bring in other people into the conversation, and Twitter is a great place to do that. Josh, any final thoughts for us?
Nope. Thanks, guys. This was a great conversation. I always learn a lot on these too. I threw my email in there. Usually there's one or two people that take me up on that. So if you got questions or want to teach me something, that's where you can tell me what's going on. Feel free. And then just to close the loop really quick, I have all these Napoleon glance things, and I think you guys will appreciate this being military. Anybody familiar with that term? Maybe you're familiar with the French term. So the Napoleon glance is being able to look at a battlefield and tactically know the correct decision instantly. And I was talking about problem solving on Twitter today, and I basically said great problem solvers aren't that way because they know the right answer. They're that way because they can easily eliminate the 80% that's not going to work, because they've walked down that path and those decision trees and those paths so many times. They don't need to analyze it anymore. They know like none of that's going to work. It's going to fail. I can focus on 2 to 3 actual decisions. Where a newbie might say, well, why is revenue? Well, it's going to be either cost or it's going to be revenue if I want to raise margin. And revenue is going to be either new customers or new products or more money per product. Like they got to walk down every branch. Where somebody's been doing it for 10 years goes, yeah, here's the issue. I know it's down this path. And I was talking about that, and somebody said, I think you like the concept of Napoleon's glance, where he was able to discern, I'm reading from Wikipedia, discern at one glance the tactical advantages of the terrain. And it was because of his experience. It gave him and other, they're using Napoleon, but of course this is all battlefields, probably even outside the battlefield in business. You get that Zen composure when you are executing because of your experience, because you've walked paths, eliminate the bad, and you're really focused on only really 2 to 3 actual decisions. So that was my other thing I was given today that I found interesting. I've got like 7 tabs. I was going to dive into it today.
That's great. Thank you so much, Josh, for joining us. I really appreciate it. And just as a reminder, we'll make sure to take that. I'll make sure to take that email out and post it in Blackboard as well, just in case people who are watching this don't view the chat at all. But you should. If you're watching this and you haven't pulled up the chat on the recording, pull up the chat, look through. There's a lot of really useful and important information and good links there. For everyone else, just a reminder, as Sandra reminded us beforehand, we don't have a live webinar next week as far as with a subject matter expert, but Sandra's doing an optional office hours on Monday. And are you going to send a reminder email out about that, Sandra? Okay, thank you. Next week is obviously Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to you all. Enjoy your holidays. It's a great time to catch up on anything you might be a little behind in. And then we'll see you on December 2nd, Wednesday, December 2nd. on finance. It'll be a week on financing your business. And we're going to have 2 people joining us there. All their information should already be in Blackboard. And so we'll be excited to see you in 2 weeks. I'm always here. Thanks. I'm still just next week. I'll be in the office. I'll have Thanksgiving with my family, but I'm here and available if you need help. So Josh, again, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your time. Thank you everyone for being here, and have a great rest of your week, and happy Thanksgiving.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.